Living a rich, fulfilling life all the way to the end is within your reach, simply by taking personal responsibility for your well-being now. But doing that isn't always easy, and without the right guidance, you could suffer needlessly and be robbed of precious time with your loved ones.
We will live with chronic disease, and this can suck us into a pattern of doctor visits and medication and even regular hospitalization. So what can you do when you decide to break that cycle?
Hattie Bryant is an author and healthcare advocate for seniors. Her research has shown that avoiding end-of-life pain and suffering is a choice.
If you don't plan, you give up your opportunity to choose. If you don't plan, the default today is death in the ICU.
In this program, Hattie breaks through the taboo of discussing death and demonstrates that if you don't make 4 simple decisions while you still can, you may be denied the sweet, peaceful passing from this world we all want. Here's Hattie Bryant.
Everyone, and thank you for joining me today to talk about a difficult subject. As much as we all want to believe we can live forever, we know deep down that it simply can't be true. But there are things we can do to live fully all the way to the end, and I'm going to share them with you today. If you're willing to plan ahead and take action on these 4 steps now, while you're healthy, you'll minimize, if not avoid entirely, the pain, suffering, confusion, and disagreements that can arise when your wishes are not clearly spelled out. Let me tell you how I know and what I learned while I was taking care of my mom. It was October 9th, 1990, when my dad called to say, "Mom's had a terrible stroke and she's in the hospital." Well, I live 600 miles away, and I also traveled in my work, so I had to arrange to get there, which I did. And during the 6 weeks that she was in the hospital, I was there every week for as many days as I could before I had to fly out to my next job. And what I learned about strokes is that we watch and wait. We're watching and waiting to see what lost functionality might come back. But with Mom, nothing came back. And more was lost, and more was lost, and more was lost. And the end of the 5th week of her hospitalization was Thanksgiving Day, November 22nd. And I woke up in my dad's house, and he had been at the hospital. I'd been gone 3 or 4 days, and he had been there every day. I said, "Look, Dad, I'll go up by myself. You just stay, you rest at home. I'll go on up." I walked in the hospital room, and for the first time, I was shocked. 2 reasons. First, her face was blank. Second, there was a feeding tube. The blank face was odd because every other time I'd go in, I got a sense that she knew someone was in the room, and I hoped that she knew it was me. But nothing this time, totally blank. And then the feeding tube. The nurses said she couldn't swallow anymore. So I sat down and I was reading the chart line by line and saw that the endocrinologist had prescribed something called desmopressin nasal spray once a day. And I learned later that this was because the stroke had damaged the part of her brain that makes the hormone that tells the kidneys how to process water. And this nasal spray was the man-made hormone replacement. Her doctor was making rounds, and he came in, and I said, "Gee, Dr. Brown, we've been watching and waiting. This doesn't look good. Is this as good as Mom's going to get?" And he said, "I'm afraid so. There's nothing more we can do. We'll have to move her to a nursing home." You see, she's no longer acute. She could have lived for weeks, months, years with the nasal spray and the feeding tube. But I looked at her. Her whole left side of her body was like a rag doll. She didn't know us. She couldn't communicate. She couldn't swallow. She was stuck. So I was a little upset, and I walked up to Dr. Brown, and he was this big man who had played football in college. And I said, "Dr. Brown, we do not want this artificial propping up for Mom." And that night, my dad, sister, and brother agreed. And the next day, the spray was stopped. And the nurses told us that without the spray, Mom would die gently, sweetly, peacefully in about 5 days. And they were right. During those 5 days, a woman came in the room and she said, "Where's Hattie? I want to meet Hattie." And she took me out in the hall. And she told me, I'm the social worker on your mother's case. And she took my hands in her hands, and she leaned close to my face, and she said, everybody needs a Hattie. You may believe you won't. You may be thinking right now that you'll make your decisions when the time comes, or that you won't have to because you'll die gently or quickly in your sleep. That would be great if it were true. But statistics don't bear that out. According to the Center for Disease Control, of the 6 leading causes of death, only 1, accidents, is quick. The others will leave you failing and infirmed and very possibly without the ability to make decisions about your own care. So how do you get what you want if you can't make decisions anymore? While watching my mom die, I realized our health and our health care is our personal responsibility. And I learned that doctors don't make end-of-life decisions. We do. Now, that's a lot to take in, but I promise that facing a few things now will give you joy and freedom to live the rest of your life without fear. Because one of the things that surprised me the most was that the people you expect to step up and handle things aren't always able to. My mom was passive, sweet, soft-spoken, deferred first to her bossy mother and then to my bossy dad. And it was my dad who had the living wills done. And I would have thought that when she lost all cognitive functioning, that he would have started thinking about what was in her living will. But he didn't. My strong and even some thought hard-hearted dad, he had melted down. And so did my sister, and so did my brother. I'm the baby of the family. And I had to step up because there was no one left. And stepping up can mean different things to different people. But there are 4 things everyone needs to do to make sure they are taken care of at the end of their life the way they want to be cared for. And I'm going to go through these 4 things for you now, so you leave here with a very clear, step-by-step process to ensure you and your loved ones can focus on what's most important when every second together counts. I'm sure you carry in your heart and mind the memory of how someone you loved left this world. Some are sweet memories, and some not so sweet. My memories and lessons learned came to the forefront of my thinking when in 2010, I turned 60. I said, whoa, I realized I have less life left than I've already spent. And with that realization came a few questions. Well, who's going to do for me what I did for my mother? What happened to the living will? Why didn't my dad step up to the plate? Who will ask the hard questions? What's the difference in total well-being and medical well-being? And why do doctors do what they do? Finding the answers to my questions sent me to USC, to the Graduate School of Gerontology. It sent me to the national meetings of physicians, nurses, and social workers. Dozens of physicians and nurses, including nationally recognized thought leaders, gave me their time. I made it my mission to find an answer to one of life's biggest questions. I was trying to figure out how to get myself a peaceful death. And after years of research, I have the answer. A sweet, peaceful death will not come out of the natural flow of our lives in this 21st century. We're all going to have to do 4 things. Step 1, accept that we will all die. You're sitting there thinking, really? Of course I know I'm going to die. Everybody knows everybody dies. Tell me something I don't know. Well, we might say we know we're going to die, but we're not very good at accepting a lot of the truth that life presents us. My husband's maternal grandmother spent her entire life on a beautiful farm near Damariscotta, Maine. And you probably know that millions of people visit Maine in the fall. And what is the fall? What's going on there? Right, the leaves are dying. The world goes to see the active dying process as it is spectacular. What's nature teaching us? That dying is a natural process, a transformation that can be beautiful. So here's a tip to help you accept that you're going to die. Not just saying the words, but really accepting it. Flip the way you look at it. Nature brings us in, and nature takes us out. So what keeps us from our own exquisite leaving? Why do most Americans miss out on the death they wish for? Why don't we experience the beauty that comes from our own room with a view and our own pillow and our friends and family? And why are so many of us hooked up to machines and dying in the ICU? Why are we in denial that death will come to us at all? These may not seem like easy questions to answer, but there's power in knowing that going out the way you want to go out is within your control. Barring any unforeseen accident, you get to decide. And after seeing what my mom went through, I've certainly decided to decide. But taking control meant I had a little growing up to do, and I don't think I'm alone. I was born in 1950, so I should have grown up by now, right? Well, too bad. We're stuck in adolescence. No culture in the history of civilization has idolized adolescence until now. This is the American culture we created. We started a movement, and here we are now, still demanding our rights. Theologian Richard Rohr says that being stuck in adolescence, we elders are not elders. We're old people acting like teenagers. I don't want to be an old teenager. I want to be wise, thoughtful, loving, joyful, and most of all, free of fear. And that can only happen when you fully embrace step one. It's no wonder we're such deniers when our brains are wired for survival. But to be fully alive in the moment, we have to let go of that denial. Psychologists tell us that denying our reality stunts our emotional growth. That you can think of a person right now who's over 65 years old who could be stuck at 15 or 25 or 35. Yeah, me too. Dr. Ira Byock is a veteran palliative care physician, and he puts it this way: dying doesn't cause suffering. Resistance to dying causes suffering. So here's another tip. Practice accepting the reality of life ending someday by taking 5 minutes for reflection and acceptance every day. If nothing else, it will certainly make housework seem less important. So, once again, step one is acceptance of the plain truth that death will happen to us and all of our loved ones. Not one of us will get out of here alive. So let's move to step two. Step two to a peaceful death is understand the limits of medicine. Just like teenagers, we want what we want and we won't be denied. We want more stuff, more doing, more achieving, more attention to ourselves, more power, more control over others, and more medicine. We're addicted to our medicalized lives. Many people believe if they find the right doctor or the right hospital, they can just avoid death altogether. Well, if death is an option, don't you think the powerful and wealthy would just opt out? Don't you think Jackie Collins, with a reported net worth of $100 million, could have just bought a cure if one existed? In 1955, President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and his doctors told him he had to give up his 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Eisenhower also had to give up bacon and eggs because a new theory had emerged that animal fat kills us. The man who led the forces that turned the tide to defeat Hitler was now eating Melba toast and grapefruit. Well, guess what? 2015 guidelines rescinded the warning that eating animal fat kills us. So I say pass the bacon, right? Yeah. We like to believe that medical advice is always right, but it can't be. When George Burns was 90, he was asked, "Well, what do the doctors tell you about smoking all those cigars every day?" Burns replied, "They said it was going to kill me." Well, what are they saying now? Nothing. They're all dead. Many doctors share the opinion that we're machines and our parts wear out, and eventually key parts like heart, lung, kidneys just wear out, then we die. And maybe that's true, but that was so last century. Today, I can get a heart transplant, a lung or kidney transplant. Just like we depend on restaurants for cooking and schools for educating children, we now depend upon medicine to save us. No worries, there's always a new drug and a more sophisticated innovation to try. In our culture, we don't see death happening around us in the natural flow. What most of us see is Hollywood death, I mean, this is murder in the shower. And then the next day, the actress is on talk shows promoting the film. This allows us to keep death at a distance. So when we become seriously ill, we go to the place that will save us for sure: hospitals. Hospitals have been called the modern equivalent of great cathedrals because they're the place we go to worship our one true evidence-based religion, medicine. My friend, Dr. Richard De La Pena, told me so much so that physicians tease about the letters MD. He said, "Hattie, didn't you know that MD means medical deity?" The machinery of healthcare defines our wellness for us and proposes solutions to problems we didn't even know we had. It sets up the illusion that it can fix whatever ails us and kick us right back into the game forever. One day in 2003, 8,010,000 women had osteoporosis. Then the next day, literally the next day, 14,791,000 women had it. What's going on? Pharmaceutical companies redefined wellness. You can see the effect of lower diagnostic thresholds on osteoporosis, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. By changing the targets or the definition of sick, millions more of us are told we're sick and we need drugs. Now, don't get me wrong, this can be good. A lot of people are helped. This can be why we're living a little bit longer than our grandmothers. When you couple new disease targets with $5.4 billion in annual spending on direct-to-consumer advertising by drug companies, we all end up spending $425 billion buying what they told us to buy for diseases that the commercials say we must have. It's hard to accept the limits of medicine when everywhere we turn, we're given evidence of the magical power of pills. So what can you do? One simple thing you can do is bring a healthy dose of skepticism to the drug advertising you see every day. Studies are available online, and you can find out who funded them. Are studies funded by the sugary beverage industry less likely to find that sugary beverages contribute to diabetes? Well, of course. Not only does this advertising increase our consumption of medicine, it turns us into what doctors call the worried well. Newspapers, television, magazines, and the internet are packed full of news about healthcare, and this heightens our awareness, and the advertising is so compelling. We are buying every pill, patch, treatment, and promise the product makers of modern medicine can dream up. And the dreaming started with a man named Henry Gadsden. He was the CEO of Merck from 1965 to 1975. He didn't want us to only take his pills when we were sick. He wanted us to take his pills when we're healthy too. We've been seduced into the false hopes of long eyelashes, flawless skin, perfect health, all propped up by Madison Avenue. Remember, we're teenagers inside and we're wishing and hoping. And the wishing and hoping keeps us in denial of aging and death. We're wishing and hoping that medicine can save us from our 21st century habits of sugar and sitting and stress and the recent uptick of drug, alcohol, and food addiction. We're wishing and hoping medicine can and will preserve and protect us. And while we wish and hope for someone else to fix us, we miss the opportunity to grow wise, to face truth and fear with knowledge and love. We're depending on something physical to work on our souls and spirits. So we're on the wrong road to freedom and peace. No matter what the ads say, no matter what we've seen cured in our lifetimes, there is an end to the miracles. So again, step 2 is understand the limits of medicine, to recognize that it could be ineffective and could worsen rather than help your condition, and in the end is always way too small up against the force of nature. Yes, our $3 trillion medical industrial complex is way too small up against the force of nature. Life is still full of mysteries, and we can't expect medicine to solve every problem. So now you know the first 2 steps to getting the freedom and peace that comes with having it your way. Up next, I'll share the simple thing you can do to claim the power that's rightfully yours when you or someone you love is faced with a life-threatening crisis. We'll be right back. welcome back. I sure hope this is getting easier for you and I to talk about. Not only should this get easier, you're going to begin to feel a sense of freedom and peace. Once you get the monkey of fear off your back, you can start to live your fullest life without anything standing in your way. So far, we've gone over the first 2 steps in the 4-step plan to learn how to live your life fully until the end. Now, let's move to step 3. Step 3 is educate yourself about your healthcare choices, which you're doing right now. Let me tell you about a choice we all have that I call a gentle path. Most of us allow other people in our lives to keep us from making this choice. Simply put, to take the gentle path will require effort on your part, because the data is in that most of us get on the do whatever it takes path and we never get off of it. The do whatever it takes path is what most healthcare systems are set up to deliver, which means if we don't specifically choose the gentle path, we won't get it. Since the first emergency 911 telephone call was placed on Friday, February 16, 1968, the natural act of dying has year by year shifted from being an understood and predictable process managed by a family doctor with support from family and friends. It has shifted into a high-tech, high-speed, multi-machine, multi-doctor, impersonal series of events that might not let us die for years and leaves us vulnerable and often voiceless and makes it nearly impossible to die gently. That almost happened to my mom. For decades, we've medicalized living and dying, and it's failed us. It often keeps us from having meaning all the way to the end. Our system is set up for us to die in the ICU. Have you seen this happen to someone in your life yet? I have, and she was only 31 years old. So what does the gentle path, or what's known as comfort care, look like? What's it like to say no to the full buffet being served up by modern medicine? Well, I can tell you firsthand. My dad taught me how to say no. He had cancer surgically removed from his colon in 1984 when he was 68 years old. He took the chemotherapy and told me it didn't bother him at all. In fact, he would go home and mow his yard after treatments. He lived fully functioning for 9 years. He married after my mom died. Then the colon cancer spread to his lungs, and he took a little bit of chemotherapy, but then the cancer was found in his liver. He hated going to the treatment, and he knew it was futile. He knew he had arrived at the spot you see here where the curve begins to turn down. He said, "Stop the medicalized life. Save the health care for the grandchildren." And we laughed at him because he was the original conservationist. He never wanted to waste anything. He opted for comfort care in his home. He enjoyed good conversations with friends and family, and then gently slipped away from us. What's really interesting and may surprise you, that even with everything they have at their disposal, that's the way doctors prefer to die too. Before his retirement in 2006, Dr. Ken Murray was a family physician and a professor of family medicine at USC. He wrote an article that was published in November of 2011 called "How Doctors Die." It was a simple story about his friend and fellow physician who was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. When that friend learned he had cancer, he closed his office, never set foot in a doctor's office again or a hospital, and enjoyed the last 6 months of his life at home with his family. The doctor chose the gentle path, just like my dad. Now, you may not want that, and if you don't, if you want every life-saving measure thrown at you until every option is exhausted, that's okay. That's your choice. But that doesn't seem to be true for most of us. And some of you are probably like me and part of the 70% of us who say, we want to die at home, surrounded by friends and family, right? I mean, does that include anyone here? Well, too bad. Nearly 70% of us die in an institution because we don't understand enough about how to get what we say we want. So, how do you get what you want? This doctor and my dad taught us. They embraced the first 2 steps of having it your way. Number 1, acknowledge the inevitability of death. They knew they were going to die, and it was simply their turn. Number 2, they understood the limits of medicine. And what have we just learned? That medicine is too small up against the force of nature. Both men knew what medicine could do and decided to choose against what we typically think of as medicine, which is a battle or a fight to cure something. Instead, they chose a newer approach called palliative medicine. This gives attention to mind, body, and soul, not just the body. So if you're one of the 70% of people who wants a peaceful, low-tech passing at home, surrounded by friends and family, you can get what you want by choosing palliative medicine sooner than later. And by putting that choice in writing, you can make it happen. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. Today, it seems as if we're required to fight disease by sticking to that do-whatever-it-takes path. And we're not allowed to say, enough is enough, and get on the gentle path. Do you know someone who stayed on the do-whatever-it-takes path too long? I do. The gentle path is peaceful, and we know in some cases this path can give us an even longer life. I have a friend whose 90-year-old mother was told she had cancer, and without treatment, she would be dead in 6 months. Well, she said, "Thank you very much," never went back to that doctor, and she lived 4 more years. Remember, by refusing extreme interventions, we're simply asking for comfort care or palliative care. We're saying, we don't want to be kept alive at any cost. We want to go when our quality of life goes. One physician wrote that for doctors, death is just another day at the office. So what do doctors do that you can do too? Here's the answer. Doctors are more than twice as likely as the rest of us to have an advanced care plan. This means they've put in writing their wishes regarding their end-of-life care, and they've named a proxy. A proxy's role is to make healthcare decisions for you in case you can't make them for yourself. And I found in my research that doctors give specifics to their proxies. Doctors told me they say things like stop curative care and start comfort care when I can't wipe my backside, when I can't carry on a conversation with people I know, when I can't chew, enjoy the taste of food, and swallow. So here's something I strongly recommend you do, and it's easy. Take a few minutes to get clear on what you want for you. Doing that and communicating it will relieve a tremendous amount of anxiety for your loved ones and suffering for you if the time comes when you can't speak for yourself. Choosing the gentle path is going to be harder than we think. We have to be an informed patient. We have to educate ourselves. And when we hear a difficult diagnosis, we need to work hard to understand the situation we're in and what we could be heading into. We have to be relentless to seek the truth. We have to take the lead, and I'll tell you why. Doctors are more likely than not to put a positive spin on a diagnosis. And when they do tell us things, we don't understand what they say. For example, they might say, your cancer has responded to the treatment, and you think, I'm going to be cured. They think there has been some effect on the tumor. To get the real truth from doctors, we have to ask hard questions, like, well, will you be surprised if I'm alive 1 year from now, 2 years from now? Or if you could summon up a sense of humor, you could just say to the doctor, well, should I go ahead and sell my furniture? Well, it's funny. And it can lead to more truth. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to divulge everything, so we got to get it out of them. In the program materials, I share a sample bad conversation and a sample good conversation. If you're ever given a serious diagnosis, you can refer to that. And if that happens, here's how you begin to take the gentle path. Ask for a palliative care consultation the minute you hear a difficult diagnosis. If your primary care doctor has sent you to specialists, listen to what they say, then go back to your primary care doctor. Let me repeat that. Go back to your primary care doctor, even when you're in the care of a specialist. If you ever have to go to the hospital, you have to be prepared to manage your care. It's on you. And that's not nearly as scary as it sounds. It's a good thing because you know yourself best. But, and this is a big but, if you're in trauma, frail, or very sick, you will need your proxy. You will need your Hattie. Why? There may be many, many very smart specialists doing for you what they do best. The oncologist, the hematologist, the neurologist, the intensivist, the cardiologist, the pulmonologist, the hospitalist. But what they do best might not be best for your total well-being. Just like my mom had a well-meaning endocrinologist, but he left her worse off than had he done nothing at all. If you do become seriously ill, please know that as talented and well-intentioned as they may be, the specialists assigned to care for you do not specialize in the whole you. Your primary care doctor or nurse practitioner are the best advisors for us when we become frail or sick, because primary care doctors and geriatricians are trained to see the whole you, not just one part or piece of you. Palliative care is new, and it's all about the whole you, and most people don't know about it, and for sure, most people don't understand it. It's delivered by, typically, a physician, a nurse, a social worker, and a chaplain. It's a team. This is because living is not just physical. It's social, it's psychological, it's spiritual. Other names for palliative care are supportive care, compassionate care, or comfort care. Comfort care is as much a part of medicine as curative care. What we grew up believing, that medicine is only the curative care and it's all about the battle, that is flat out wrong. In 1979, I read the work of self-help guru Paul Meyer. He taught that for us to live a good life, we need to set goals in 6 areas: physical, mental, spiritual, social, family, financial. And not coincidentally, these are the areas of our lives that palliative medicine supports us in when we need it most. The problem with curative medicine is it only knows how to set goals in one area of the 6. The big machine of curative care doesn't think about our mental, spiritual, social, family, or financial goals. For the last 30 years, what is now a multi-trillion-dollar healthcare apparatus has succeeded in many ways to address our physical well-being. But in the process, our total well-being can be diminished and even dismissed. A doctor can think you're doing fine when the numbers he or she is measuring are going in the desired direction, but that doctor doesn't have to live your life. That doctor doesn't have to set timers to take medicine. Have you ever had to do that? That doctor doesn't have to find transportation to treatments. Have you ever had to do that? That doctor doesn't have to eat ridiculous bland or liquid food or be stuck inside when everyone else is outside. And as we now know, they often choose not to do any of those things themselves. Choosing the gentle path takes planning now. If you don't plan, you give up your opportunity to choose. If you don't plan, the default today is death in the ICU. You may be thinking it's too soon to choose. Sadly, too soon can turn out to be too late before you know it. Remember the physician in the survey who said, "Move me from curative to comfort care when I can't wipe my backside"? Well, I asked her, I said specifically, why did you write your directive that way? And she told me, if I can't wipe my backside, it means that either my brain is not able to send instructions or I'm no longer able to use my hands. While some people can be happy in this situation, it's very important to me, and without them, the quality of my life would be so poor, I would simply be ready to let go of this life. Can you, right now, think about what quality means to you? Let me tell you why you want to be as specific as this doctor has been. A 74-year-old man I'll call John said yes to an LVAD, a left ventricular assist device. This is implanted to work in the heart to support circulation. Over the next 23 months, he was admitted to the hospital 15 times, all due to his heart failure, even though he had the LVAD. You can see from this chart about organ failure that when we have a failing event, someone can call 911. We are rushed in to be stabilized, then we go home, but never as good as we were before the event. The event is indicated by the deep dip in the line. The hospital visit does not heal us, and we will fail again. Then we get scared, or someone around us gets scared, so back to the hospital we go. And each time we go in, we come out weaker than when we went in. Not stronger, not fixed, not healed. John's wife, his designated caregiver, died 16 months after the LVAD implantation. It's not uncommon for caregivers to die before the person they're caring for dies. On his last admission to the hospital, he asked that the LVAD be turned off because he was constantly breathless and fatigued. He couldn't go fishing. He was tired of it all. Sadly, the palliative team had to fight with the cardiologist to let John have what he was asking for. You see, the cardiologist thought John was doing just great. Oops. Finally, John was discharged from the hospital to relax with comfort care. John's story is a typical example of the practice of modern medicine. It has redefined life. Life can now refer to bodies permanently intubated with nothing on the EEG strip. Yikes. Here's the reality. Most of us will not die quickly. You can see from this chart that primary care physicians take care of about 2,000 of us, and each year, 20 of us will die. Just 2 will die quickly from an event like a heart attack or a stroke. The other 18 have been living with chronic conditions. Remembering this as we age is very important. We will live with chronic disease, and this can suck us into a pattern of doctor visits and medication and even regular hospitalization. So what can you do when you decide to break that cycle and let nature take its course? Here's what you can do. You can hand your family and your physician a document that clearly spells out how you want to live the rest of your life and how you want the care to go, and give them your desired goals for how you want to live each day. So there you have it. Step 3, once again, educate yourself about your healthcare choices. When our condition is worsening and death is near, consider the risk versus benefit of treatments. You are not required to passively turn over the last months or years of your life to a system that insists on surgery, stents, chemotherapy, blood transfusions, and breathing and eating lines and tubes. We have choices. I hope I'm stirring up the fight in you to get exactly what you want for every breath you take on this earth. When we come back, I'm going to give you specific things to put in place to make sure that happens. It's the final step on your path to have it your way. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and by now, I hope you're seeing the value in doing a few simple, easy things to prepare for a time in your life when you may not be able to make your own decisions. The payoff for this small investment now is absolutely huge in terms of your comfort and peace of mind. So, what's the final step you need to take so you can live the rest of your life free from worry? Step 4 is choose a proxy. And why? Who's going to do for you what I did for my mom? Who will ask the hard question? Who will seek truth from the very complex 21st century healthcare system? Who will be your Hattie? At least those are the questions I hope you're asking yourself. But I've worked with enough people to know that you may be instead saying, well, why do I have to think ahead? Why don't doctors just do what they do best? When would a highly trained group of physicians at a respected institution not know what to do with us? Why do I have to tell them what to do? Well, here's why. Because the Patient Self-Determination Act was passed into law on November 5th, 1990. The law is built on the idea of informed consent. This law means that you and you alone have the right to direct your own care, and physicians can't do anything to you without your permission. The formal document most used to provide direction is called an advance directive. The advance directive has 2 parts, a living will and a durable power of attorney for health care. Part 2, the durable power of attorney for health care, is more important than Part 1 because the typical living will template uses words like terminal, irreversible, incurable. And these are legal words and are too fuzzy and are often ignored by medical providers. Here's the thing, you don't actually need to spend money on an attorney, but you do have to spend a little time preparing your instructions. In order to help you with this, I've included a way to do this in the program materials, and all you have to do is fill in the blanks. This will give you the only document you really need. So once you've got this valuable tool, you can relax. If you don't provide instruction and name a proxy, you can get caught up in the standard practice of modern medicine. For example, if you can't talk to the doctor, what does the doctor do since he or she can't do anything without getting permission? Well, here's the catch. Your arrival in a hospital or clinic is giving permission. Someone brought you or called 911, and that's saying to the professionals who work there that you want them to do what they do. You want the doctors to keep you alive. And today, there are many things they can do. And this is the reason so many of us are dying in the ICU. In my case, the doctors will do all those things they're taught to do until my proxy, my Hattie, shows up. And it'll be the same for you if you follow the steps I'm giving you here today. And it's not just me saying this. There's data to support the fact we all need a proxy. And here it is. About 85% of people die after chronic illness, and up to half of them cannot make decisions when close to death. So, yes, you need a proxy, or by other names, a surrogate, a durable power of attorney for healthcare, or a healthcare agent. Most of us have not done this very simple thing. We've not named a proxy for healthcare decisions, and by extension, we've not provided clear direction to our physician, proxy, friends, and family. You may think you've done this because you have a living will, and that you've taken care of this, but not so. Unfortunately, the typical living will does not provide clarity. The template most people use is a cookie cutter, and as I said, too generic and general. Frankly, most of us haven't even thought about not being able to speak for ourselves. I know it's not pleasant, but the hard truth is most of us will not be able to. If you can't, I promise you, what follows is a lot of confusion and struggle around end of life. The solution is to simply choose a proxy now. Find your Hattie. While physicians and all the institutions they work in have to comply with the law, which compels them to do everything they know to keep us alive, we have been ignoring the law. But now that you and I know about this law, it's time for us to do our part. Those of us who do not take personal responsibility are every day putting millions of caregivers, doctors, and nurses and social workers into what they officially call moral distress. Moral distress occurs when a healthcare professional knows the right thing to do, but is not allowed to do it. Remember, doctors do not make end-of-life care decisions for you. You do. In my research over the last 5 years, I've attended many conferences, seminars, read dozens of books, and hundreds of articles on this topic, only to discover that Pogo was right. If we want a sweet, gentle death, we have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. We might want to blame our children, our spouses, our doctors, the advancements in medicine, having too many choices, but we can't exempt ourselves from personal responsibility to make choices sooner than later. And I'll say this again. We all think it's too soon to talk about and think about our death, but the facts are in. While you may think it's too soon, soon it becomes too late. And when it's too late, guess what? Others do what they want for you, which may not at all be what you want. A few hours of learning and thinking, followed by a few minutes of writing, will ensure you have what you want. Dozens of people have told me, oh, everybody knows I don't want to be kept alive on machines. Oh, my children know, no machines. No. Well, Medicare will pay over $50 billion every year to doctors and hospitals for the last 2 months of patients' lives. This kind of money is not being spent on keeping us comfortable. It's being spent on extreme measures that include machines to keep us alive. So apparently, Medicare didn't get your memo. The dollars being spent prove that we might say we want a peaceful, comfy, pain-free death surrounded by friends and family. Our behavior says we want everything done to keep us alive, come hell or high water. It's clear. We say one thing, then demand another, or our family makes the demands because we have not made it clear to them that we want a peaceful, gentle, low-tech passing. Just think if the Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon, had named a proxy who was a trusted friend. This proxy could have prevented his sons from doing what they did. Ariel Sharon went into a coma due to a stroke on January 4th, 2006. His collapse was so complete that the doctors at Hadassah University Hospital in Jerusalem advised his family that he should be allowed a peaceful death. But his sons didn't listen to the doctors. Why did the sons have the power to speak for their father? Because if we don't name a proxy, the law typically defaults to family, and they were his closest family at the time of his stroke. Doctors were not allowed to do what they thought best. The sons threw the doctors into moral distress, which I just talked about earlier. The sons made the demand, and advanced medicine kept Ariel Sharon alive on a mattress grave for 8 years. He had a feeding tube, was treated for pressure sores, blood clots, and pneumonia that are a constant threat to comatose patients. Does that sound like something you want for you? It's been said that when someone is dying, there is no such thing as a functional family. And this happened with my mom. When she was dying, it wasn't that we were fighting, it was that my dad was not himself. He couldn't function as we always expected him to. So our family system lost its equilibrium, and the rest of us were just confused. My mom was physically debilitated, and my dad was emotionally debilitated. In his beautiful book, A Grief Observed, C.S. Lewis wrote, he described the death of his wife as an amputation. And this was my dad. As Mom was dying, he felt as if he was losing an arm or a leg. We all need someone to speak for us, like I did for my mom. So, how do you choose that person? Legally, any responsible person in your life who's over 18 years of age can be your proxy. That person may be a spouse, child, other family member, or it may be a close friend or the adult child of someone you're close to. You could choose a young minister, a neighbor, your attorney, your CPA, a cousin, the spouse of a cousin, the spouse of your own child, a niece, a nephew. If you choose your own child, choose your obnoxious one, the one like me. The one who won't back down, the one who will ask hard questions and stand up to the doctor and say that's not okay, the one who will work to find complete and honest information. But even with that said, I don't recommend you choose a spouse or child. While people closest to you might seem the best choice, remember what happened to Ariel Sharon. His sons were probably in deep grief because they were watching their father and the leader of their country be debilitated by irreversible damage done to his brain. Remember what happened to my mom. My dad was not able to think, to sort things out. He was suffering as much or more than Mom. And since Dad was the named proxy and not able to do his job, I took over. But what if my sister and brother had fought with me? Just like Ariel Sharon, my mom would have been sent in a comatose state to a nursing home with a feeding tube. Your proxy will listen and speak to clinicians if and only if you lose decisional capacity. My father never lost his as he was dying, and my mother-in-law, she never lost hers. They both gave us and their physicians the order they would no longer partake in curative care. They were not at all interested in that fight stuff. They both wanted to be at home with comfort care. My mother-in-law was a nurse and was clear she would have nothing to do with surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation when she heard she had cancer in both of her kidneys and in her spine. She went home to be in peace with friends and family and died 13 days later at the age of 93. My hero. So, you may be wondering who I've chosen as my proxy. My Hattie's name is Fallon. She is strong, smart, logical, calm, 34 years my junior, family by marriage, has read my care goals, can stand up to other family members and physicians, and be trusted to do for me what I want for me, not what others might want for me. So many of the frail and seriously ill get stuck in the ICU because family members demand, keep my mother alive, don't let my father die. Like my dad, they can't imagine life without the patient, even though the patient is in great pain with little or no functionality. This is because those family members are suffering themselves from grief over the loss, or shame, or guilt, or estrangement from the dying person. So what's going on here? They are using the ICU and our $3 trillion medical industrial complex as their last opportunity to make amends for themselves. You see, the caregivers and family members are often sicker than the sick person. Here's a little known, very specific piece of guidance for choosing your proxy. Don't choose your granddaughter. Physicians who work with terminally ill patients say granddaughters tend to put their fingers in their ears and hear nothing, even in the face of facts delivered with compassion. Here are just 3 of the 10 qualities you want in your proxy. A person young enough and healthy enough to be around in the future. A person who can stand up to your family members who may not agree with your goals. A person who can negotiate with physicians to achieve your stated goals and be willing to fire a physician who doesn't listen. Take your time to sort this out and have a look in the program materials at the other qualities you will want. 15 years ago, an attorney did our first healthcare directive, and he just stuck my husband in as my proxy. I now know this is not the best idea. Once you choose a proxy, what do you do next? You tell everyone. Save yourself and all the people you love from crisis. Tell everyone who your proxy is and tell everyone how you want the last few years of your life to unfold. The more detail you provide and the more people you tell, the easier the future will be for everyone you love. It's time to take this taboo topic out of the closet and put it smack dab in the middle of our kitchen table. Imagine leaving a spouse, children, friends, family, nurses, and doctors to try to figure out how to care for you best. Why risk the chaos, heartache, struggle, pain, suffering, confusion, and disagreements that can arise? So step 4, the last step, is choose a proxy. And in doing so, you'll provide specific instructions to loved ones so they know what you want when you're no longer able to speak for yourself. With that, you'll find tremendous freedom and peace. A sweet, peaceful death will not come out of the natural flow of our lives in this 21st century. We all have to do 4 things. 1, accept that we will die. 2, understand the limits of medicine and get that medicine is too small up against the force of nature. 3, educate yourself about your healthcare choices. And 4, choose a proxy and provide specific instruction. So that's it. Answer the questions in the workbook, in the program materials, and then I want you to go have fun with the rest of your life. I say, now that you're ready to die, you're really ready to live. And living fully all the way to the end is an inside job, and it has little to do with doctors or medicine. Jackie Collins was told in 2009 that she had stage 4 breast cancer. She only told her 3 grown daughters. Between her diagnosis and when she died in 2015, she wrote 5 novels, traveled, and enjoyed her 6 grandchildren. 2 weeks before her death, she flew from Los Angeles to London to be on a television show and to tell her sister that she was dying. You see, her famous sister, Joan Collins, had no idea that Jackie was even sick. This is one of the last photos taken of her. 5 days before she died, she invited People magazine to come to her home for a final interview. She was 77 years old. Jackie Collins calmly embraced her short future. She took the gentle path. She stayed productive and then slipped away in peace. We have choices. No need to act like death is coming soon because we don't know. When you prepare for it, you can live like it'll never happen. Do you want to join me and face the music and dance all the way out? Yeah, I want to sing right along with Frank Sinatra. I did it my way, and you can too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.